Hey there, my name is Jaap and this is Let's Code It Out. For the past 8 years I've been a backend developer, but quite recently I've started to look into front-end engineering, more specifically how to build web applications with Next.js on for sale. And quite recently I found this component library, sort of, called shadcn UI, which allows you to really quickly build web applications. By providing you almost out of the box components code that you can just copy paste into your web application. Um, so I wanted to look into it and see how we can, for example, build a login screen with this. Let's get started by visiting the website of shadcn UI. Here you can see it's a collection of sorts with beautifully designed components that we can easily copy and paste into our application. And instead of providing a component library, this allows you to build your own component library, so to say. They even have examples down below with what you can do with it. And if we go to the blogs part of the website, they've already prepared some code examples. So if, for example, you would like to have this dashboard, you can just click on the code, see how it's structured. But for now, I would like to scroll down a bit and find the authentication part because they have some great examples here on how to build login screens. And I think I really like this one because it also allows you to experiment a little bit with single sign-on using Google, for example. So let's get started with this one. If we go to the code, we can see that we would need a button component, we need a card with some of the components that we'll get into later, an input and a label. So let's see how we can create a Next.js project using shadcn UI. If we go back to the website and click on Get Started, we have an installation page here, and because we're using Next.js, I'm going to click that one as framework. And then we have a couple of steps that we need to follow in order to set everything up. Seems pretty straightforward. So let me open up my terminal right here. And instead of using npm, I think I'm just going to make use of bun because that just seems to work faster on my machine. Next app. Now let's, for the name, go with demo. Demo. Yes, we would like to make use of TypeScript. Yes, we would like to make use of EaseLint. Yes, for Tailwind CSS. Yes, for source directory, please. Sure, let's make use of the app router, and we can just use the default import alias. Now, once the project is all set up, let's go to that directory that we just created. And let's open it up in Visual Studio Code. Now, let me shift my screens around a little bit. And let's move this over to the right half. Now that we have created our project, we have finished step one. And the second one seems to be to actually initialize shadcn UI. So let me open up a terminal. And run the command again to initialize it. I think we can make use of the default style. Base color slate seem fine. I'm not sure where we are going to use the CSS variables for, but it's the default, so let's go with yes. Okay. That seems straightforward. No, I don't think we want to actually make use of a different font, so let's just skip this part. Here it also explains a bit more on the app structure. I really like the defaults, by the way. So what it will actually do in the source directory, it will have created this components library where it will, I think, create a subdirectory, and there it will actually install all of the components that we're going to add later on. It even has an example right here. So if we execute the add button command, it will install a button component, which I think will then be located in the components UI directory. So given that we now have everything set up and running for shadcn, let's first run our project to see what it currently displays. Okay, let's get rid of all of the default. And let's go with the default hello world first. There you go. Let's see if Tailwind is also set up properly. Yes, that looks beautiful. Okay, so now that we have that set up, let's center everything. And I think we also need the size. Interesting. Oh, I think because the container isn't actually full size yet. Okay. Ah, right. Now, I typically tend to do it like this. 100%. 100%. Ah, there you go. So now that the entire page is 100%, basically, we can now force the flex container elements to be absolutely centered. Now, let's see if we can start by adding some components. The first one that we would need is a button. Then we're going to add the input element and the label. And label. And I think the last thing that we would need was the card component itself. And I think that's it for now. So let's see if we can start by building a card element in the middle of the screen. And I think we need a header first. The title would then be login. And we can also provide a description, I believe, in the card header. And when we save this and refresh the page, you can see we already have this card now in dead center. And this is already looking quite good. So let's continue with the card content. And I think that this is basically where you have you switch again back to regular HTML. So why don't we start indeed with the form element? And then I think what we can do is first start with a label, and don't import the ones from Radix UI, but instead import the ones from your components UI directory, because those are the ones that are the layer on top of Radix provided by shadcn UI. So we have a label here. Let's do something like username, then do an input, which again is going to come from the components UI directory. And it already has some ideas here. Let's refresh this page and see what happens. Now what you can see here, it already has a lot of styling applied to it, and that is because we are making use of shadcn UI components. They already have a lot of default styling set up for us so that we don't have to do it ourselves. Now, let's also add one for password. And as you can see here, we already now have the basic inputs necessary for our login screen. And if I believe correctly, you can also do like a card footer component. And I'm not entirely sure if that goes into the card content itself. Let's find out. And here you can then have buttons, for example, this one. Yeah, interesting how this works. So let me go back and have a look at the example to see how this actually works. Okay, so they actually build a grid. That is interesting. And they don't make use of the card footer, but instead just build one themselves directly into the card content. Okay, so let's try this out, right? So instead of making use of the card footer, they do have a grid, which I really like. So let me just make the form a grid. And I get a 4. And then within it, for each element, they also create a grid with a gap of 2, which I think is done to space the label and the input a little bit. So let's do this instead. Now, if we go back to our application, how does this look? Oh yeah, this looks better. The spacing is just nicer, like this. And you can also see that the elements now are also a bit more spaced out. So let's do the same for the password. Yeah, this is looking better already. And then how do they do the buttons? Because the buttons are already quite there, I would say. Yeah, just request the full width for both of them actually. How does that look? Yeah, this already looks quite nice, to be honest. And then to just add the other button. think we can use the variant and switch it to outline. Well, there you go. Yeah, and as you can see, so we have these variant properties, right? So if we actually open up this components UI button, what you can see here on the top is that they have these variants configured. And I think those are custom properties that we can actually add to the button in this case. And that will apply or merge the default styling that is on top of here and merge that with the variants that you can configure here. So for example, we have these variants, right? The default, which is this black button over here. But we also have this outline button, which is this white button over here. But as you can see, we also have this destructive. So let me switch back and show you what that looks like. So for example, if we add another button with the variant of destructive, it will actually look a lot like a delete button, right? It's red, it's very destructive. But this is nice. I really like this idea of having these properties that influence the default styling and automatically get properly merged with the default styling. Because you can also change the sizes here. So for example, let's say I wanted to have this login with Google button a bit smaller. I can just say size, small. And now as you can see, it's slightly smaller. And because we have the width full, it will actually fill out the entire width. But if we were to remove that, it doesn't actually change anything. Oh, that's interesting. So I suppose by default, it already has the full width. Interesting. But at least you can see now, right, that by providing these different properties, we can actually influence the way that the button looks or behaves. And we can even add our own options here, which I really like, that we can easily extend this. And I think that is also what's supposed to be the power of shadcn UI, is that you have ownership or at least control over the code that you have in your project, which I really like. So yeah, this is now somewhat a login screen where we have a username and password, and it didn't even take long to set up. So I'm really happy with this. See you later.